This is part 3 of culture. We're still talking about values. Values and standards of beauty. And here's a beautiful scene right here. And this is the Ndebele couple in South Africa. They dress in the same bright colors they use to decorate their home. So we can see that the standards of beauty, the color and design of everyday surroundings, vary significantly from one culture to another. I think that's just beautiful, don't you? And so in North American and European societies, we make far less use of bright colors and intricate detail. So our housing and clothing appear much more subdued. Now this is an illustration of how culture can change. This is from the Rochester, New York newspaper in 1957. Don't be skinny. Amazing new easy way. Puts on pounds and inches firm flesh. When underweight is due to poor appetite or poor eating habits. Hospital tested. Look at the picture. Gosh, Gene, you sure are popular since you put on those extra pounds. It is here, the all-in-one concentrated meal of easier digested bodybuilding calories you've long heard was coming. If you are skinny, thin, and underweight because of poor appetite or poor eating habits, try Weight On, homogenized liquid emulsion or tablets. Cheeks fill out, neck and bust line gain, arms, legs, thighs, ankles, skinny underweight figures fill out all over the body. Weight On also improves the appetite, gives quick energy, guards against fatigue, sleepless nights, poor endurance, low resistance. Also makes for better digestion of the fats that put on weight naturally. Easy weight gains of 5 to 50 pounds reported. So students, this shows the difference between today and then. This is probably Jane Russell, a famous movie star in the 1950s. And she was not skinny like Twiggy or something like that. And it was thought that a full-size woman was very adorable and appreciated. So the standards of beauty, the values have changed. In talking about values, we can have guilt and shame, two different things. Guilt is a negative judgment we make about ourselves, and shame is the painful sense that others disapprove of our actions. So we may not feel guilty about what we did, but we're shameful that other people disapprove of what we did. So these are some values. Ideal culture and real culture. There's the difference between the ideal and the real. Ideal culture is the way things should be. And the social patterns are mandated by values and norms. Real culture is the way things actually occur in everyday life, not just the way they should be. And social patterns that only approximate cultural expectations. There's always a difference between the real and the ideal. This brings us then to our fourth element of all cultures, and that is artifacts, also called material culture. These are things made of molecules. So non-material culture is the intangible world of ideas created by members of society, the intangible ideas, whereas material culture or artifacts are the tangible things created by members of society. So material culture and artifacts are not just ideas, they are the things that we use. So material culture includes a wide range of human creations and artifacts, and they partly reflect the underlying cultural values, but they really reflect a society's technology or knowledge that is used to make a way of life in particular surroundings. So we have pottery vessels from the past, tells us something about their culture. There are some arrowheads, there are shark's teeth and so on that they use. There's a smoking pipe, maybe a peace pipe or something. We can judge them by what they use, a drinking cup and so on, maybe a spearhead. There's a knife or a sword of sorts from another culture. And there are some, now what if some archaeologists 1,000 years from now were digging in this area where you live, and they found in your room a trash can. And in that trash can, there was a Pepsi can. It has the symbol on it. They would think, they believed in the yin and the yang or something. They try to guess what that symbol meant. That's what we do with these ancient cultures. We try to know what all these things mean on this pottery, the designs. Maybe it was alluding to some god or something. And what does the word P-E-P-S-I mean? Peepsai, what does that mean? So they think that's part of our religious heritage or something. So here's a picture of some natives. The anthropologists are coming, so they're putting away their television sets and their stereos or radios or telephones so that the anthropologists can study them in their habitat. I thought that was funny. And the anthropologist says, this is not what I meant by Facebook, all the shrunken heads that the headhunters had gathered. Here is another of our 5 elements of cultures. This one is called norms. Norms are the rules and expectations by which a society guides the behavior of its members. A lack of norms or breakdown in norms is called anomie. A as in atheist, without God, and nomi as norms, without norms. So without norms. So a society without norms is anomic. In our study of suicide, you may remember Durkheim's study of suicide, anomic suicide, when the norms of society break down, or they're conflicting norms. There are prescriptive norms and proscriptive norms. Prescriptive norms are those rules of society that are prescriptive. They tell us what we should do. And proscriptive norms tell us what we should not do. When you go to the physician and the physician writes out a prescription, it tells the pharmacist how to make the medicine, and it tells the patient how to take the medicine. That's a prescription. It tells them what to do. A proscriptive norm is like the 10 Commandments. It tells you mostly what you should not do. Don't do this and don't do that. Now, norms are the overall idea of rules and expectations by which a society guides our behavior. Mores occur when the norms are widely observed and have great moral significance. They're often enacted in formal law. For instance, every society and every culture has a taboo, an incest taboo. A taboo is a strong more, a strong norm, if you will, that is negative, a strong negative or proscriptive norm, a taboo, and it has moral significance. For instance, incest is in every culture as a taboo. You can't do it. You should not do it. So mores are like the 10 Commandments. They're very strong, widely observed, have great moral significance, often enacted into formal law. Then there are folkways. Folkways are not nearly as strong as mores. Folkways are norms, and they are for routine and casual interaction. They may be followed or they may not. It doesn't raise much. Maybe the raising of an eyebrow, or maybe someone would say privately, how disgusting. But it's not really a law or something morally that the person would get in trouble for. Manners and customs, informally enforced at all. And so folkways also include fads and fashions. Fads and fashions of clothing, of the latest thing around in society. So you remember, I don't know if you remember the hula hoop. People used to wear their pants down, hanging down low as a fad. Remember those socks and those shoes like that? And there was this ball, this kind of ball hanging up in the 70s, a disco ball, and then tie-dyed shirts. Over here, there's a coonskin cap. Davy Crockett was a Walt Disney movie in the 1955, and I had a coonskin cap, and it was quite a thing. And most of them were not actually made from coonskin, but some of them actually were. And so it was a different era back then. And then here's the Rubik's Cube was a fad for a while. and all the different, you can see all the different things, the little cars that make noise and so on. So you can see all these things, the fidget, the Instapot, maybe your parents have an Instapot, and these things are popular, the unicorns, the keto diet, that's a real popular thing right now. Of course, Frozen, man, Frozen is making them millions of dollars, billions of dollars, and of course, Baby Yoda. That's a big fad right now too. So whatever the latest thing is, that's a fad in fashion. These are folkways. They're called folkways in society. And so there's cultural diversity. There are a lot of cultural patterns that are readily available to only some members of society. And this is high culture, cultural patterns that distinguish a society's elite. Perhaps those who go to the symphony orchestra and ride in their Rolls Royces, high culture. And popular culture, cultural patterns that are widespread among society's population. So high culture might include the type of church you go to, an Episcopal church where it's very formal, or just a Pentecostal church where we dance and jump and shout. So difference in that, those sorts of things. There are also subcultures that involve difference and hierarchy. The subculture are cultural patterns that set apart some segment of society's population. So there's different types of subcultures. The Goths are one of these. Now the Goths are various kinds of Goths: vampires, Satanists, ultra Goths, weekenders, only play at it, and these 9 Inch Nails groups and so on. Sometimes called baby Goths, these weekenders. They dress up on weekend, but through the week, they're pretty much like everybody else, have jobs and so on. Now, sometimes the Satanists are experimental or proclaimed. And what they do, I'm not quite sure, but you can study that out. Take our course in deviant behavior here at ORU, and you will see what those people do. Vampires also. There was a bar in Sapulpa, Oklahoma, that specialized in vampires. They would drink each other's blood, perhaps cut each other, prick a finger and suck their blood, stuff like that. Some of these vampires actually have their teeth reformed by a dentist and to give them fangs. They don't really, and they're not true vampires, but they want to look like vampires and live that lifestyle. It's a whole thing, isn't it? And then here are some of these people, the different types of goths and vampires and so on. So there's all kinds of subcultures. And Hell's Angels, the neo-Nazis. ISIS is a subculture. The Church of Satan, swingers, we know what that is. Husbands and wives who have sex parties with other husbands and wives and trading and so on. Skull and Bones, that was a subculture at Yale University, still going on. Bush, the 2 Bush presidents were members of that. The Crips and the Bloods, remember those? The Banditos, something like the Hells Angels. And the punk, various punk groups, anime, manga. The Deadheads, those are followers of a group, a rock group called the Grateful Dead. And they have fans all over the world. And they're called the Deadheads. They meet and have concerts and so on. The Ku Klux Klan, very terrible group, militia groups. You could just go on and on. The Skinheads, we know something about a lot of these. Take our course in deviant behavior and maybe we'll touch on some of these. Then there are some other things about subcultures. There's also a counterculture. These are countercultures, are cultural patterns that strongly oppose those widely accepted within a society. So they oppose the cultural patterns of the larger society. So these were the hippies in the 1960s, early 70s. And these hippies did a lot. The Flower Children, and began in San Francisco, Haight-Ashbury district. Their slogan was tune in, turn on with drugs and drop out. Timothy Leary was the one who coined that phrase. And so these people dropped out of society, went on communes and that sort of thing. You may be familiar with some of the concerts they had in New York and so on. So The hippies rode in these buses and so on. So these hippies, they rejected mainstream political institutions. In 1968, they violently demonstrated that they hated the Democratic Party back then, and they opposed the election of President Johnson and all these things. And so they avoided working for the man, that is the establishment. Tune in, turn on, and drop out, and just live in a commune. So this is one of their buses they had painted up. Today we still have countercultures. These are Antifa, and so they oppose probably President Trump mostly and other things, but that is what they're doing. And so counterculture. Now this is not, they're not wearing these masks because of coronavirus. They were just wearing these masks to hide their identity. That these were, because if you say things like this is Antifa again, you don't want to be identified. More dead cops is not really, you can see how that's counterculture. Multiculturalism, the United States is kaleidoscopic. There are lots of things that we could say about this, but it's all about the inclusion of the contributions and experiences of African Americans, other racial and ethnic minorities, women, non-Western peoples, because a lot of our education, a lot of our institutions are all about Western, the great books of the Western world and so on. But in multiculturalism, we don't throw away those Shakespeare and Plato and Aristotle and all the great books of the Western world. We don't throw those away, but we ought to add in and include women and non-Western peoples and so on. And xenophobism is the fear and hatred of things foreign. A lot of people, they look down on foreign people and migrants and so on. And so xenocentrism is the opposite. Xenocentrism is the belief that the products, styles, and ideas of one's own society are actually inferior to those of another. At one time in the Soviet Union, Soviet Russia, they loved American blue jeans and American movies and so on. And they thought their products were inferior to those of America. Much of the world was like that for a long time. And in the United States, it was often thought after World War II that if you bought something from Japan, it was inferior, poorly made. But since then, Japanese products are thought to be superior to those of American products. In fact, there are 0 TVs built in the United States. Televisions are not made here. Telephones are not made here. They're made in China, in Japan, in South Korea, other countries, and they are considered superior to America in manufacturing. So those are those are the 5 elements of culture. This concludes our section.